Okay, hey, we're gonna get started today. First of all, thanks for everybody taking the time out, getting the permission, making the logistics to come out here. Super excited to kick off like the first official panel of the Life of the Deal series. I know to kind of let the panelists know, we did a meet and greet intro kickoff 2 weeks ago, and everybody kind of met internally. One of the themes we always like to tell them and the interns in the program is, start your network now because all of these interns like got an internship in a top city in the country. They're working for great firms across our industry. Just for context, we have people in brokerage, we have people in engineering, we have people in accounting, I think, construction, across the whole gamut of the commercial real estate industry. And one of the awesome things that we get to do is amazing people like our panelists that are going to introduce themselves to you, take time out of their schedule to kind of give you perspective on what the life of the deal is. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Jolin. But make sure if you see anybody from CPL, thank them. Like, this is a great spot. Everybody had great meals. It's one of our sponsor companies within NAOP, and they have an amazing office and a great view.
All right, thank you so much. Hey everyone, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I think I've met many of you during our kickoff event 2 weeks ago, but a quick intro, my name is Jolin Fang. I'm with Fern Development. I work on acquisitions, also an affiliate instructor with the Randstad Department of Real Estate at UW, and I'll be moderating today's panel. And just for context for like what is the Life of the Deal event, so for this event or for the series, what we really want to show you is kind of behind the scenes how to put together a real estate deal and who are the players within this industry, how do you gather work with different professionals across different fields with different expertise to get a project across the finish line. So we're so lucky to have our wonderful panelists today who is going to share their part of the journey. And let's just provide more context for our panelists here. Who's here is like undergrad or still doing their undergrad? Can you raise your hand just a little bit? Okay, just graduated college? Okay, post or master degree or advanced degree a little bit? Okay, awesome. So I think we have like good mix good mix of people here. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists for today. And can you please just briefly introduce yourself, who you are, your company, your role, and kind of share a little bit about your journey within the career. Jake, why don't you start for the first one?
Okay. I'm Jake Maxwell with Prologis. Been with the company for 10 years. For those of you who don't know, Prologis is a light industrial developer focused in logistics. So think warehouses, fulfillment centers, things like that. All right. So big boxes on big pieces of land. But I've been working with them for 10 years. And then my background, so I got a degree in construction management. So about 25 years ago, I was sitting kind of where you guys were. I did an internship at Marcus & Millichap on actually multifamily, working for a multifamily broker. So I got to learn about rent rolls and underwriting, sales comps, rent comps, all that kind of thing. So that really piqued my interest. I knew I wanted to get into real estate. I ended up going into construction management, got a degree in that. Went to work straight out of school, built an elementary school here in SeaTac, and then I went out to Hawaii, spent 2 years there. Built a high-rise in Waikiki, which was a ton of fun. I ended up building 2 more high-rises over my career with different developers and contractors. And then eventually, about 10 years ago, I made the transition over to the big box side of things with Prologis. And I played many roles in the past on the contractor side, on the owner side. I worked for Boeing for 4 years, rolling out their 737 MAX program with their facilities division. So I kind of wore many different hats, and now at Prologis, I kind of deal with everybody from brokers and attorneys, engineers, architects, customers, right? Kind of orchestrating and conducting. Everybody plays their role. Everybody plays their instrument to create this product.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Holly Golden. I am a land use attorney at Hillis Clark. So a land use attorney is someone who works in zoning code and then helps projects navigate the entitlement process. So my role will usually start at the very earliest days, or can start at the very earliest days when someone's sort of kicking the tires on a site. What can I build here? Can I put my big box here? What does the zoning allow? And then once they decide to move forward, then helping that project navigate the entitlements process, help expedite things wherever possible, deal with appeals on the back end. So my role in the process usually ends once a project starts construction, unless some crazy stuff comes up. And it does. So my clients are developers. I work across different industries, do a lot of housing work, affordable and for market rate, industrial, office, when office was being built, life science, big civic projects, healthcare, sort of whatever needs to be built. And my journey, I decided in 4th grade that I was going to law school, so I was laser focused. So you're all already behind if you want to be a land use lawyer. Just kidding. I didn't even know that being a land use lawyer was an option. I thought that I wanted to do environmental law, and then just learned about the industry when I was an intern at my current firm, Hillis Clark, which is one of a few shops that does a lot of local land use work. So really just lucked out and joined the firm because of the people, and then fell in love with the practice and have been at that firm my entire career. So over 15 years now doing land use work, mostly around the Puget Sound.
Hi everybody, I'm Tina Pappas, and I am the president of NAI Puget Sound Properties, and we are the 3rd largest brokerage house in the Northwest. We have a Bellevue and a Tacoma office. I love this because I can remember being in your spot, and so it takes me back on my journey on how did I get to where I am today. And it even started, you think about what did you do in high school? I loved working, I loved sports, I was in every sport, and I would have more than one job. It'd be 2 or 3 jobs by choice, right? So I loved waitressing, and I loved working in an admissions office at the university in my town, and I babysat, right? So that's kind of what you have, right? It's like these jobs that you take and you think, oh, what did I like from that? And what didn't I like from that? Then going into college, I kept the waitressing job, and I thought, well, I go up to strangers, right? You're trying to make them feel comfortable with their meals, and then working on campus in the admissions office, I did tours of the campus. So again, I was in front of people. I was trying to, it was hospitality. I knew that I wanted to get into business. I didn't know what. I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll own a business one day. That was kind of, the deal. So getting out of college, I started with a sales company that I thought was really cool. But my gut when I was interviewing was, I don't know if I care about these people that I'm interviewing, but the job sounds really cool, and do they have my back? Do I trust them? Do I like the product that I'm selling? And I really didn't. And I just said time out. And so I went back into waitressing, worked at what's Macy's, and then a friend of mine just quit Microsoft, and this is 91, so this is like when Word and Excel and all these things are coming out. And she went to an actuarial firm and said, hey, best friend, would you just want to be an assistant with me? I could teach you how to use the apps, and you can learn how to put letters together. And I said, sure. And it was downtown. It was actually 1 block away. And as I walked the city, I thought, I love the buzz. I love the business. How does this come together? And this is like on a break, right? And I'm trying to figure things out. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I love sales. I love business. I love putting things together. I'm going to try commercial real estate. And I talked to my parents about it, and my dad said, I just talked to this guy who came in my office, and he's in commercial real estate. I said, can you let him know and help me out? And so he helped me out, is Jerry Matthews of Kidder Matthews and Segner. And Jerry had set me up with 4 to 5 different companies, and I interviewed with all the companies, and I landed with Colliers. And it was great because I wanted to get into a very lower level job. I wanted to understand the industry. I wanted to be a research person. I wanted to understand the brokers in my office and the leadership. And I had that opportunity and the skills of understanding how to use the computer, how to use the programs. I was teaching all the different brokers like how to do that, right? And and then trying to figure out, okay, well, what area of real estate now do I want? And waitressing, right? I loved retail. I loved working with restaurants. So I was kind of going through that path where I started at Colliers and I was a retail broker for 6 years. And I loved being on the landlord side. So through the years, I worked for prominent developers. I actually owned my own business with 6 others, and we had it for 6 to 7 years. So it's interesting to think about what you think about in high school and college, because it's still working behind the scenes in your brain. And so having my business and then going into working with Bill and Melinda Gates, and then I worked at Tarragon. I still loved brokerage. I loved that part of the business. So switching to NAI Puget Sound Properties, now I'm in the back scenes. I'm actually giving my brokers the skill sets that I've learned, and I love seeing people's success. So that's kind of where my cycle of like from the very beginning to where I am today. Because we all didn't start out just like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Again, thank you so much for being here with us today. We know you're all incredibly super busy, so we really appreciate the time. And Holly, thank you for joining us again. Nice to have you again on the panel. I think you all shared how you started with your career, and maybe intentionally at age of 4.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade, just clarify. And maybe not so intentionally, but I think that provides a lot of insights for students who are trying to figure out their careers within this industry as well. And so now let's just shift gears a little bit and talk about how each of you actually do within a deal. Like, how does your role fit within the life cycle of a deal, and how does that essentially evolve as your career progressed? Tina, why don't you start with you first?
What I loved about brokerage is that when people come to interview with me, I'll ask them, are you the friend that says, hey, let's do this tonight, or here's the plan, and you're coordinating that effort? Because if you are, this is a good job for you. Because that's exactly what happens, is where I'll see a space and I'm like, gosh, I swear this brewery would be so good for this location, right? So now you've got to rally and you've got to call in the parties. And so as a broker, if I'm representing a tenant, I'm calling them to say, let's look at spots, let's look at locations, what do you like, right? You're gathering that information, and when there's interest, then you start the process with some administrative, non-legal things. And once that gets going, then you're bringing in the lawyers and you're bringing in contractors, because you want to know how expensive things are. And you're working with the tenant. They may have their own people and their own teams, and that's okay. You're part of that, and just making things. You're making sure that everything's on target and that everybody's kind of meeting the schedule. You are the center. And what I loved a lot about brokerage was that I was able to go into these companies, and I was part of their company, and I would watch the dynamics and what they did and what they stood for and how they worked together. And it was so interesting because I would always learn something almost every day. So it's kind of, you listen and you are one to keep things moving forward, and you're actually working with everybody involved in real estate, and that's what was really fun for me.
So I already touched on a little bit sort of a land use attorney's role in the deal. It's typically pretty front loaded through due diligence and then getting permits. One thing that I love about really every role in this industry is that one person can't build a building. It is inevitably a team that's working on it. And so it's really fun to get to work with architects and engineers and sort of the full group of consultants that come together and bring their pieces of the puzzle to actually get this project over the finish line and then eventually built. Another piece of my job, besides doing the kind of project work and due diligence work, is legislative. The land use world and zoning is really inherently political. It's governed by sort of big state statutory frameworks, the Growth Management Act, and then each local jurisdiction has to do their own long-range planning, and then they adopt code to implement those long-range plans. And so there are a lot of ways to influence the process, both strategically, but then you also have to be on your toes to make sure that there aren't rules coming that are going to jeopardize what you want to do on a site. But especially right now, things are really hot on the legislative front for a couple reasons. One is that jurisdictions are going through those long-range planning exercises throughout the Puget Sound and now implementing the code. And so there's opportunities to insert yourself, and you got to keep an eye on what they're doing. But then also, because we're at a weird place in the market, it often is a time that jurisdictions pick up new land use legislation to either get things going or because they've got the staff capacity. And so there's a lot cooking, and that's a really fun element of the land use world.
All right. So with Prologis on the development side, we kind of operate as a three-legged stool. So I'm the developer. We have the guys that buy the land and the people that lease and manage our properties long-term. But typically where I get involved in a deal is from the conception of it. So we might get an offering memorandum from a brokerage firm, or we might find a piece of land that we like, industrial zoned, that we want to look at and provide an unsolicited offer on. And so the land guys come to me and they're like, hey, what can we do here? You know, we're thinking like the market probably wants, and we'll get broker input on this, but the market's probably looking for 200 to 250,000 square foot buildings, trailer parking, things like that. I'll go take a site plan, sketch up some rectangles, then I'll call somebody like Jericho and be like, hey, like, can you take a look at this and make sure this works, and where are we getting our utility tie-ins from, and which direction do these buildings want to go? Can we get the site to balance? Things like that. I'll call up my geotechnical engineer. You know, what's the dirt like here? Where's the groundwater at? Like, are we going to have to do deep kind of ground improvements on this project, or are shallow foundations something we can get away with? You know, call my architects, have them put together all the setbacks and the site plan as well. And then we kind of iterate on that. I continue to put pricing in. You know, I've created some models internally for really putting numbers to the box. That's pretty easy for us. The box is easy, but the land is what's costly and high risk. You know, so I'll call land use attorneys. You know, we may have some easements we have to clean up, or we may have to do a rezone. You know, so I'll talk about strategy there.
Critical areas. Critical
areas, right? Wetland fill, SEPA, CEQA, or environmental review down in Portland. You know, depending on where you're at, to get the land use approval to do what we need to do. And so all that's happening from the beginning. We're iterating on the numbers, you know, updating our financial model. Eventually we sign a PSA or an option to ground lease, depending on what the deal is. Then we're on the clock, right? We've got 90 days to get to a certain point of DD before we need to close. So kind of marching towards that date and de-risking the project as we go through it. Sometimes we want to get through entitlements before we close. Sometimes we're going to take the risk and close before entitlements, but we want to hit certain gates and make sure we de-risk these certain high-risk items, things like that. After that, we close, we'll finish entitlements, we do our design. You know, we're constantly looking for build-to-suit customers. You know, we've got, you know, probably 50 to 100 customers that do tons of business with us every year. We're marketing it, you know, with brokerage firms, trying to find customers to do build-to-suits. Sometimes we go spec. So depending on what that deal is, we'll put it together, the design, and then go in for permit to get that ready, and then we execute, build it, then we lease it, and we hand it off to our operations team. And so that's kind of the span of where I touch the deal. And I really enjoy it because I get to do a lot of different things and learn a lot from all these different people that, you know, are specialists in everything that they do.
Awesome. Thank you. And just kind of a follow-up on what you all just shared, because we have a younger audience here today. Like, how did your role or how did your interaction shifted from when you started within this industry compared to where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, you go from doing the work to coaching and motivating teams, right? That's kind of what happened. But it's mastery, right? You get into the business, you want to learn all the different things, right? You want to learn how to communicate with people. You want to learn how to do the, you know, dig into the drawings and dig into the contracts and leases, right? Master all of those things. Become good at the development process from beginning to end. Once you can do it, like, you know, 2 or 3 years, 5 years with the company, you've adapted to the culture. You get enough reps in where you're like, okay, like I get it now. And then that just keeps building over time, and eventually you start managing other people and learning how to motivate them and, you know, teach them, but also let them do things the way they want to do it. You know, and that's a different skill. So you're always kind of evolving and redefining who you are. Your hat will change many times, and you may work for several different companies. You know, if you're lucky, like Holly, like you might find a company that you're good with, and other times you work somewhere and you realize, hey, this isn't a good fit, and you got to move on. But that's just part of that experience, right? And just continuing to look for those ways to adapt and evolve and redefine yourself.
Holly, would you like to share a little bit as well?
I think that was really well put and applicable across industries. You start out kind of behind the scenes, learning, doing, grinding, and then work your way up to where you're strategizing more and directing folks. Our industry is so heavily built around relationships, both within the industry, but then also in my world, you know, to go through the entitlements process, those relationships at the permitting jurisdictions. And so that evolves too. Those relationships deepen as folks change their roles. And it's funny because you start your career out, you know, with your peers looking around the room. And as you progress, those peers become the decision makers. And so your relationship and role shift along with the folks that you've grown up with in the industry. And it's a surprisingly small world.
Yeah, no, and the organization that, right, is CREDA, was NAIOP, but CREDA was, I've been a member for 30 years, and I grew up, it was like my peers, and then we're getting better jobs, right, and you're keeping those relationships, and it's helping you in so many ways, so there's that too. But going back to, you know, starting as a broker at Colliers, I think one of the things I encourage you to do is brace for the uncomfortableness. Like, just if something's uncomfortable or you're just thinking, no, I don't want to do that. Like, no, do it, because it'll be the best thing you've done. So when I was at Colliers for 6 years, and I was asked to work for a developer called Fisher, they have the Como News and they have the flour mills, and they develop industrial and office and retail. And I thought, well, I like being a broker, I'm good. But it was like, oh wow, they have so much. It'd be really cool to get into development. And I did it, and I was scared because I was in a good place, and it was the best thing I ever did because I understood how things came together. I understood what really good leadership was, how you're passionate about your team. So we had in-house engineering, construction management, property management, and I was in charge of all the leasing and marketing for the building it's Fisher Plaza. It's right underneath the Space Needle with the satellites. That's a mission critical facility. I was part of that. That was so cool. And when the company decided to sell its real estate, we were so bummed, but the dream of having a company, and so the leaders, we said, let's buy the company, let's form our own company. Again, that's so scary. No one's going to be paying, we're paying ourselves, right? And so we did it, and we became a phenomenal company. We went kind of more towards an engineering company, and I was then president of this engineering company, and I thought, okay, I didn't think I was going to get into engineering, and we had somebody from Chicago buy our company. Well, one of our clients was with the Bill and Melinda Gates, and they asked me, hey, would you head our real estate? Again, how cool is that, right? I said yes, and I was taking the chances. I was scared to death, and hopped on, and that was cool. It took me all over the United States. I worked on everything you can possibly imagine in real estate, and so again, that was a jump, and it was an incredible experience. Loved local, and I was getting Tarragon is a development firm out of here. They did industrial sites, multifamily, retail centers, asked me to help them. And again, I was like, well, I'm good. Work for Bill and Melinda Gates. It's kind of cool. But was I really happy? Like, was I happy with culture and product and my role? And so I took that jump again. Again, it was uncomfortable. You can just hesitate, and you can kind of just stay put. But just listen to the voice inside and take those chances, because that's where I'm telling you these stories, and it was really, those are hard choices, and I was so glad I made those choices. So that's just something always to keep in mind, and really connects with people. I mean, so when we talk about CREDA and we talk about being in a situation like this, like, reach out to people, talk to them. You're going to grab something from them that you'll say, wow, that was really interesting. Or I remember that person, they were talking about that company, and you can reach out to them, right? So always have that in mind.
Thank you so much. And also, sorry, I should have said that from the very beginning. I know a lot of you would have like some amazing questions for our panelists. We will open up for Q&A towards the end of this, so you do have a chance to ask questions if you have. So it's just not just me asking the questions. So we're gonna do that towards the end of this. So I'd love to make things more tangible with some real project that you've all been worked with. So what would be a project that you would like to share with us that really stands out in your career? That can be the most rewarding, the most challenging, or simply the one that taught you the most. Holly, how about we start with you for this one?
Oh, I can't pick one. I'm going to tell you about a couple. So when I first started out, the first big land use project I worked on was the new Amazon campus in Denny Triangle. And it was so cool. It involved all kinds of crazy land use issues, street and alley vacations, a pivot. We'd entitled like sort of a normal rectangular building, and then it was like, actually, we want to build some spheres. Like, okay, how do we make that fit under the code? And then sort of along that same timeline was working a lot in the South Lake Union rezone. So this was adopted in 2012. And previously South Lake Union was all kind of industrial zones. And so that rezone completely transformed that neighborhood. It was really fun to be in the code, reworking the code. And then in the decade following, did a ton of projects in South Lake Union, and so it was really cool to see those projects come to life that you had been wonking out in the code over. And then on the sort of civic side, it's really fun. I mean, on every project you work on, part of what's cool about this industry is that you get to help contribute in some way to like building the community that you live in. So it's so cool to drive around the city and point things out. One of the projects I worked on was the new aquarium ocean pavilion. And so I have a 5 and 7-year-old. And so, at the time I was telling my son like, oh, I'm working on this building and, there's sharks and like the shark window and on. And then I was pointing out something else and he goes, are there sharks in that one too? I was like, no project will ever compete, but it's so fun to be able to see and have a tangible effect on the community that you live in. So those are a few to highlight over the years.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll just stick to the Fisher Plaza, what I was telling you about under the Space Needle. We were building it, we had a retail floor, and we wanted a restaurant. And I love John Howie. Who knows John Howie? That he's like one of the best owners, chefs in the city of Seattle. And I called him and I said, hey, I have this great opportunity. I know you just opened up C-Star in Bellevue. And he's like, I'm good. And I'm like, no, you really should see this Seattle spot. It's awesome. So I encouraged him to come, and he did. And he's like, I may not do C-Star here, but I have another concept. And I was like, great, let's go. Well, it took 2 years to do that deal called Sport, if anybody ever went there. It was there for 20 years. But that was fun. I think I was pregnant with Melina, who's in the room, working for NAP. You can raise your hand.
Got her.
I got her. And my daughter. And it probably was that. I mean, retail deals take a long, long time. And so then on the flip side, where you're working on these kind of deals, I had a vacant space by Pike Place Market. And if anybody knows Tully's, the coffee shop, anytime they would fight and they would want to take the best spots. And so the trick was to say, I've got Starbucks looking at this space, Tully's, what do you think? And it's right next to their first shop at Pike Place Market. So I called Tom, who was the owner, and I said, I've got this great spot. He's like, oh my God, where are you? I'm like, I'm in my office. He goes, I'm picking you up. I go, okay, get in the car. We look at the space. He goes, get leases together right now. I want to get the deal signed. That never happens. And so I put the lease together, went to his office, no legal review. He's like, I know, we can work this out. We can do this. I get it. La 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 la. And he signed it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never had that happen before. And I just remember it was like $35,000 commission, and it was like, wow, that was crazy, because that never happens. But that's like the joys of deals. They're always different. You meet people and you just have these hilarious things. I mean, I have so many stories, but just give you a little taste of retail for you.
Yeah, I've got a couple too. One of them was a 40-story residential high-end condo in Pike Place Market. That was back in 2006. It was called 1521 2nd Avenue. It was the first 40-story residential tower in Seattle, so it was a lot of fun. Everything else before that was, I don't remember what the limit was before that, like 20 or 25 stories. So it was really cool to be a first. It's just awesome view every day. 6-day work weeks. Every week we did a floor. We had a bunch of local celebrities, very wealthy local celebrities buying units, customizing their units. That was a ton of fun to be on that and work on the developer side of things. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Is that Dimension?
Opus.
Oh, or the name of the building?
1521 Second Avenue.
Marty on that one?
Marty?
He could have been.
Yeah, Marty was on it.
And Tom Parsons.
Yeah.
Tom was on it. Yep. Yep. William
But Douglas
Justin.
Howe bought the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Howard Brin.
So one of my clients, the developer, he wanted that unit, and so I'd come to his office because we're trying to do deals together. He's like, I don't know if I'm getting screwed or or is this a good deal? And he had an infinity pool, and yeah,
Did you see it?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So the gunmetal fireplace
Yeah.
in the lab or the swim spa
yeah.
exterior in the wine cellar.
So this is a real estate developer that put a lot into. He was one of my big clients, big risk business guy. But here's the nice part. He gets like the best condo in the city.
Yeah.
So, and that's what you were working on. It's amazing.
Yeah. So that was really cool. I've got a couple actually on the industrial side of things. Kind of another first was Georgetown Crossroads. So just off of 4th in Michigan, we built the first modern multi-story warehouse in the U.S. So there's many multi-story warehouses in the U.S. This was unique because it had ramps where you could drive a full-size truck and trailer up, and it had a full-size truck court on the second level. Underneath that truck court was warehouse space, and then it was a 3-story on the other side. So the top floor of the other side was maker space, so kind of techie type space. Amazon ended up leasing the whole thing. Really cool stuff they do in there now. They're testing drones, drone deliveries in there. You walk through it and see like every iteration of every drone they've built, like hanging from the ceiling. So that was a really cool project as well. And then we're wrapping one up right now just south of Boeing Field. So it's across the street from Boeing Field. We got appealed by Boeing. We got appealed by King County. King County wanted to do a deal there for their bus training. So we worked out a deal with King County to put them in this part of the site that the FAA regulates. So we ended up making like greasing the skids by doing a deal with them in this one portion, and allowed us to unlock developing the rest of that site. That site sits in 2 different jurisdictions. It's in Tukwila and Seattle. So we're getting on 4 of our buildings. We're getting 2 permits. We're getting 2 sets of inspections. We're following 2 different codes. I mean, it's kind of a pain in the ass. It's a great one for learning. It's great. Like, it's great for learning, and a lot of my teammates have worked on it. But it's kind of a case study, like a master's thesis case study. I mean, it's across the street from a Superfront site, the Duwamish River. It's in the FAA protected zone. So that was, those are the 3 I can think of. But every project is unique in some way and fun in some way, and that's part of real estate. Like, you're just going to do a bunch of amazing things, and you're always going to be able to look back and be like, oh, I remember that one, or show your kids, and it's tangible, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think just one quick note before the next question. Did you see how small the world gets and your network matters? You're talking about one specific company or one specific condo and a person,
right,
and then the inner lab between it. I mean, that happens in Seattle a lot more. Well, I feel like in every smaller city because I've worked a lot of places, but the relationships and like who you meet and how you connect details. Like Amber sits on our committee, right, and knows Marty that she used to work with, and you're seeing how small the world gets, and it's a little bit smaller in commercial real estate, and it's a little bit even smaller in Seattle, but it's really cool, and I think it kind of hits on the theme that really like how I introed it at the kickoff of your network matters, and like creating relationships and getting uncomfortable is like key, and we just saw that happen live. Super cool. Happens a lot more than you think, and you just got to kind of keep building those steps. Sorry, I talk a lot.
Okay. Good. All good? Okay. Just making sure. All right. And again, like going back to our young professionals here. Like let's go back in time, your college self, like if you were to give one piece of advice to your younger self, soon to be graduating self, or fourth grade self, what would it be?
I mean, Tina and Jericho both alluded to it. It's really getting out of your comfort zone. Like, if you're in your comfort zone, that means you're not growing. You're probably actually going backwards. So continue to get out of your comfort zone, try new things, reach out to that person that you might think is too busy to talk to you. Like, you never know what's going to happen. I think that's the biggest one. I mean, the other is just, if there's any opportunity out there, just take it. Go take opportunities. You never know where it's going to lead you. I never had any idea that I'd be where I am today. I just knew that I liked real estate and wanted to, be involved in all aspects of that. I found a really great company with really, really good people. Everybody that I work with, all of our consultants, contractors, I absolutely love it. And, if I hadn't taken those jumps from different companies to other companies and kind of taken some risks, I'd never be here.
I think you've heard the theme today that the relationships matter, and just hold on to that, and don't discount some of the connections that you make early in your career, because you will grow up together. It's a small town, and I think to build on the idea of pushing your comfort zone, be really intentional. Take ownership of your career and the path that you're on. Don't sit back and let it happen and wait for opportunities to fall in your lap. Go out there and own it.
Advice, I would buy more real estate. But I didn't have the money, but I would have bought at the beginning. But I just think, right now, all that you have is your reputation and how you behave towards others, right? I mean, and you've got to, I can't stress how important it is to have manners and to be thoughtful when you're meeting people, and the follow-up to meeting those people. I will interview a lot of younger people, and I had one of he's a broker now, but he had addressed me as Tina on an email. I'd never met him before. He's out of college. And so I thought, okay. So he said, "Can you give me any advice?" I said, "Yeah, my advice is don't call the president of the company by the first name on an email until they tell you can. You do that, right?" And it's just thinking about being respectful and follow through and ask questions. Ask the people that you're interviewing with. Ask them about their journey. Ask them about how they like the company. Come with a ton of questions, because you want to know so much about that job and about that company, because it'll give you the understanding of how much they care about their people, and do they have your back? Do you trust them? Is the culture good, right? And so I can't stress that enough. And the funny part to that is Daniel, who works for us today. He said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I didn't know." And so we hire him. And then I was with my marketing team, and they're in their 20s and 30s, and we were all talking, and Daniel passes by. And I said, "He's such a great broker." And they said, "Yeah, but it's so weird. He keeps calling us by our last name." And they didn't know, right? And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That's funny." No, but just in the follow through, even emails afterwards, if you really like that company and you liked what they had, because it was this fitting all the categories, don't stop at one email. Don't stop at one telephone call. Continue to do it. I mean, just in a rhythm, just to say, "I'm here. I remembered this part of the conversation. This is what I'm doing." You've gotta have that, because that's how you're gonna stand out.
Telephone call. The other thing is pick up the phone.
Yeah, pick up the phone.
Don't email. Dialogue is so much more effective than your monologue on email.
And one of my brokers, he came in from the University of Washington. He said, "I know you don't have any internships, but I really want to work here. I'll work for free. And I'm like, "Wow, okay, let's have you in here, and I'll put you on research projects." And he came in the office. He said, "No, I don't want I don't want to email and I don't want to have a virtual call. Come into your office. I was like, wow, there's a hustle. Comes into the office, kills it with research, meets one of the brokers, one of our most successful brokers now, and he had 1 year to go at the university, and he was making commissions and money because he was just hustling, and he loves it, and I have him today as one of my most successful younger brokers. But that was the hustle, right? It was like, no, I'm gonna take one more step and have you understand how much I want to work for you. And so, I mean, those are just the little tips. It's not awkward. You have to do it.
Thank you so much. I think there's a lot for us to learn here today, whether that be how different players, whether that's brokers, attorneys, or developers work together to move a project forward, to start a project, get across the finish line, or just in general, how do you build your relationship within this industry, right? So with that being said, I would love to open the floor to you guys. So if you have any questions for our amazing panelists, this will be the time to ask them. Anyone?
There we go.
I had a question for Holly about, you mentioned that the city's current state has a lot of influence on the work you do and how the economy and everything grows within the city. Where do you feel the city's sitting right now with the growth within commercial real estate?
Really good question. There was a lot of anxiety after the mayoral election about what it meant for the trajectory of the development sector in Seattle.
Yeah.
Both on the regulatory side and what new rules might be imposed, anti-business or anti-growth potentially, but even more importantly, just from the external perspective, a lot of capital comes from outside the city and the market, and that perception becomes reality because those dollars are really mobile and it's easy to just go over to Bellevue or Sunbelt or anywhere else in the country or the world. And so, frankly, I would say TBD. She's relatively untested. But there have been a couple bumps for sure. I think that on the development side specifically, she's made a lot of comments about being the most urbanist mayor Seattle's ever seen, has made a big splash about taller, denser, faster on the comprehensive plan implementation. It's one thing to upzone and allow more density. It's another thing to actually get projects built and projects financed. And there's been a lot of work. I'm part of a group that was started after the administration, after we were getting a lot of these calls, called the Seattle Housing Roundtable, that came together with market rate housing providers to try to figure out what solutions might be and sit down with the new administration to try to tee up some solutions and some win-wins. That had been going really well until a bump over the weekend of the 11th hour. So we'll see. But where I'm sitting today, I'm not feeling as rosy as I might have a week ago. But it really matters.
Yeah, also just a reminder and a plug for you guys to make sure you're voting and making sure that you're staying aware of what's happening in your city, because it absolutely affects your job, whether it's you're a multifamily developer. Energy code is a huge part of it too. So just, I wish I got that advice a little sooner, but stay plugged into your local governments.
We're gonna start calling people out. Let's go.
This question is for every speaker. So I'm wondering what's a skill or something that you wish you were really that employee would have before going to?
I'd say picking up the phone and learning how to speak with people and convey your message clearly. I think with COVID and kind of your generation's kind of experience, there's been probably some setbacks to that. And so just really getting out there and talking to people face to face, picking up the phone, quick calls do wonders. You won't even imagine how much better a quick call will get you to where you want to go than shooting an email and waiting for a response. And you'll build those relationships faster, and that's just super important.
I'd say a sense of curiosity. Like if you're working on some project, think about how it fits into the bigger picture, ask the follow-up questions, take it to that next level. I think Tina had such a good example of that how that manifests as hustle. But I think that it's easy if you just think about it as a sense of curiosity and to push yourself a little bit further.
That is what I said, but also a sense of awareness. That's a big deal. Like when you're around in meetings and you're noticing, and sometimes some people have it naturally. Like I'll know if it's a tense meeting, just I can walk in and just scan, and I know what's going on. But it's also understanding, like always assume positive intent. So when someone's disagreeing with you and you're just thinking right off the cuff, like, no, no, take the no away and just go, okay, they're saying something, they're saying it that way because they're assuming positive intent. Why? So when you assume that about somebody, then the questions start. Like you start to ask, and then you grow and you understand, wow, well, maybe I wasn't thinking about everything, but assume positive intent. It's like one of my favorite things to help me with, because I'm quick to make my, I understand, I think I'm right, but if you wipe that clean, it'll help you understand the other side, and it'll help you come to the agreement. So I think that's a very important skill set, and to keep it in your head, assume positive intent, right? So.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
My question's for Holly, but I'm assuming everyone has an answer or has experienced, thought about this before. I know like Holland just completed some office to residential conversion, like multifamily, and like there's a lot of like B-tier office in downtown Seattle. I'm from Portland, like it's not trading really in the CBD. So like, what do you guys think of kind of that process? How is the administration dealing with that? And like, do you guys see like a long-term, executable plan?
So I can speak to the mechanics of the actual process because I worked on that one, and it was relatively smooth and easy. I mean, there was state law passed, local law passed, and it set up to be relatively streamlined and straightforward. Especially on the land use side, it took some navigation on the technical code side. But it's one thing to say, hey, we've got empty office space and we need more housing. Wouldn't it be great to put more housing here and create an easy process for that? It's a totally different thing about whether or not that space actually converts and whether that's an appropriate use. It's a really interesting question, though, as we think about policies and process. Sometimes a policy change doesn't actually, with great intent, doesn't lead to the outcomes they want because of the physical limitations.
Yeah, because on the construction side, that could be difficult. Like you think, oh, we'll just convert this office building to residential. It's just not that easy, and it's really costly.
And look at New York, that building just got condemned. It's collapsing. I don't know how that happens.
And I just took a Chicago River tour, and they were talking about the conversions of these buildings, and they had this cold storage that had been a cold storage building for years, and they decided to convert it to a residential. It took 6 months for it to thaw.
Oh, yeah, no, it's crazy.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible.
It's been freezing for years, it's just a giant ice block underneath.
But I would say that that's a good example of my perspective is, let's fucking try it. Like, why not? It might not get things built, but there's a couple examples of it working out. And so as you think about these challenges, especially in a densely built urban area where like the easy land's already been grabbed, the easy projects have already been built, like we've got to think creatively and stay in evolve mode. So I say let's try it. We start with the policy side and then see what happens.
Similar to one of the panel questions, but if you guys were to go back in time to know where we are right now, like in college or like just graduated, is there anything like specifically you guys would have done differently to maybe help yourselves like stand out or create more success for yourselves earlier on or even further down the road?
One thing that I think about is early on, I felt the pull to go plug into a lot of different organizations, like a lot of networking events. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here. And that can be valuable. You meet different people, but I've found that it's much more beneficial to pick, one or two groups and be much more deeply involved, be on committees, get into leadership, form real relationships, and you'll get a lot out of it as opposed to sort of scattershot, surface level engagement.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I really have liked my journey, and because I didn't have much, right? It was just like, okay, my gut is going with people that I like, that have my back, that I really kind of like being with, and then making sure that you're a part of that. Because when I joined, I was probably 3 broker females out of 80 guys, and they were all fraternity, and they were not all, but a lot of them were fraternity, and they were UW, and I was Western. I mean, so like I didn't, I wasn't part of that, but I didn't really care because I just thought, okay, I love the leaders of this brokerage firm. They have my back. Then I got into a team that I really, and that's when I was in research, I was thinking, well, what do I really like in real estate, and who are the brokers that are really great for me that I can trust. And so I went to that group, and I was really happy that I did. It's all I had, right? So is what I liked, and then making sure that I was with people that I liked too.
That's good advice. It makes a huge difference to work with people that you like and have your back.
Yeah, for me personally, I'd say not being afraid to ask questions, especially when you're in a room full of veterans. As a young person, out of college, you think they've got so much more knowledge than you. You don't want to ask a dumb question and look bad. There really is no such thing as a bad question. You're going to learn from it. If you ask a dumb question, and sometimes that happens, you're going to learn from it, right? But that's the curiosity, and if I could go back in time, I would have asked way more questions. I would have spoke up a lot more in those meetings instead of deferring to, the elder people in the room. And I think, the industry was different when we were coming up. There's a lot more psychological safety now, and I think a lot of leaders realize, hey, like, we want to hear, we want to hear from everybody in this room. We don't want to squash anybody's ideas. Bezos has a rule where the least senior person speaks first. Right? So I think it's changing. So just make sure, keep that in mind. Don't hold back. Doesn't mean you need to ask every question in every meeting, but if you need to pull somebody aside and just say, heard you guys talking about this, what's this mean, or can you explain this? Just make sure you do that, because if you're not, you're missing out on growth opportunities.
And that's such a good point, because sometimes the rhythm of the meeting, you're like, okay, if I ask a question, they're gonna be mad. So I would just make notes, don't understand this, ask, and then afterwards just go, hey, you know what, we were talking about this. Can you help me with understanding this point? And it's not bad. It's great, because you're showing hey, I'm really listening, and I just don't know an area, and if you can help me, I'm going to be a better team person. So don't be shy about that. But understand sometimes maybe you can't ask that question at that time. But I'll ask questions that I know, just because again, I'm reading the room, and I can see you. I'm thinking there's no way they know what's being said, right? So I'll ask that question. So just to help out.
I think we have maybe time. Go ahead.
So for context, I'm an interiors intern at Gensler. I don't know a whole lot about real estate or the industry or anything like that, but I'd like to know about the sustainability aspect of it and the environmental impact, and kind of what things you might have to consider or implement in your role, or if you outsource specialists for those kinds of things. But I'd just like to know more about sustainability, because I didn't hear it mentioned, and I know that's for long term and the longevity of the real estate and everything.
Speaking of Prologis, so sustainability is kind of a big part of our culture. We've done every project that we do has been LEED silver minimum. Since I started, at least, it's probably been 15 years, and we've got a consultant in a volume program where it's just really easy for us to throw all of our new developments into that. We also have 1.3 billion square feet of real estate, of rooftops that are underutilized. So we're putting solar on those rooftops, and we just last year just hit a gigawatt of electricity generation from photovoltaics, from solar panels and battery storage. So our goal is to continue building those out. right? It makes sense, especially with the increasing demands of power. You need the power where people are consuming it, right? It's so like it takes 10 to 20 years to go build a power plant, and then the transmission lines to bring it into wherever the people are, right? So it makes sense to put it on your rooftop. Now, Seattle is not the greatest place for it, but there's going to be an inflection point. It's going to be soon. I mean, our energy rates are increasing rapidly. One of the quickest increasing, I think, in the country, where it's going to be cheaper to put solar on your roof to generate electricity and send that back to the grid than to pay retail price for that. We've also got a bunch of battery storage projects that we're doing, a lot of unused land where we can go and put like 10 megawatts of battery storage. We'll charge off peak, and then we send that energy back during peak times when the utility needs it. We have a cost sharing agreement, and we can charge for that electricity, but the utility takes 40%. So it builds capacity into the system and provides cheaper electricity during those peak times because we're able to charge in the middle of the night when nobody's using it. Aside from that, there's a lot of push for electrification of vehicles. We want to do that. We've actually done that with one of our customers, performance team down in LA, where we built like 50 truck chargers. But our tenants need to buy into that. Like we get a lot of pushback when we go through, environmental SEPA. When we go through SEPA, where the community is like, hey, we want you to make it all electric trucks. And we're like, well, we got to lease this space. And until it's scalable, until our customers can scale it and it's proven and it's cost effective, we can't do that. Like if we're going to go spend $1 million to put this in, if we don't get more rent for it, it's not going to lease. And so we're not going to do that. Like we'd be out of business if we did that. So it's also kind of educating. I think it's important with energy and sustainability to educate, like, hey, like this is a great thing, right? Electrification of vehicles, but we have a ways to go before it's scalable, before these, our customers can use it. And I think they would all want to do it. Eventually it's going to be cleaner, safer. It's just a matter of getting more adoption, and it just takes time to do that. So we're always looking for ways, different, unique strategies, and we've got some where we're bringing in hydrogen, or we need, like on that project with the 50 charging stations for the trucks, we actually put in natural gas generators because the utility couldn't get us power for 3 years. So we put in natural gas generators that can generate that electricity so they can start charging their vehicles. And it was actually more sustainable than the grid provided power because we're using these brand new state-of-the-art gas generators. So it's funny, I mean, there's a lot of misnomers around sustainability, and you may think that whatever you're getting is sustainable, and sometimes you're surprised. Like natural gas is actually less carbon intense than what the grid's providing. Like when I heard that, I was kind of blown away by it. Like, wow, so natural gas is actually better? Yeah, because they got old power plants that might be running on natural gas or coal or some old technology. Sorry, that was a lot.
It's very integrated though, because that's part of like, I know we talked about how the deal coming together and all the different portions of it, but living in Washington and on the West Coast in general, we're leaders in the sustainability front, which also means we have the longest entitlements and permitting timelines. And so it all integrates there. And a lot of what Holly mentioned, a lot of those regulations involve the energy code and sustainability and like creating a better community. So it's very interlapped here, as opposed to if you went to like the Southeast or the Midwest, where I've done a lot of things, like we're leading in that front. So it's actually cool to be on the West Coast, right?
Yes, that's right.
Coast. There you go.
That's right. Yeah, there's a ton of just sort of those sustainability regulations baked into the legal framework, the backdrop of every project. I would also say that I have found a lot of value in working in these dense urban projects. Like there's nothing better for the climate than building density and jobs and housing near transit. And that's something that the whole industry is contributing to.
Yeah.
Inherent in the work that we do.
Good point. Like the multi-story warehouse we talked about earlier, right? If we can pack more storage space into the same footprint by going up, like that's saving on gas, that's saving on all the concrete that goes into it, right? I don't have to build 4 walls twice. I can do 4 walls and go up. Like, so it's, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way you got to go up if you want to be sustainable.
And to work with really good teammates, because otherwise 2 years into a project, it's not as much fun.
Yeah.
I think we are towards the end of our time today. Again, I'd like to say thank you for all of our panelists for sparing time to talk with us. There you go. Thank you so much. And also thanks everyone for joining us today, and just a little bit forward looking for the rest of the program. So we're going to continue this part. We have additional professionals who are going to talk about their parts within the deal of real estate. So that's next week, and then we're going to have DI panel, and then we have job search panels for the following weeks. And
yeah, it's good. Okay. Yeah, and for location wise, the next one is at Kimley Horn. It's just like a block away, so right location. A couple of admin things. We love our host. This place is great. Chairs back in the same place. Make sure we're putting trash away, and then sign that roster wherever it is if you did not sign in for Quint, or she'll yell at me. Thanks everyone, and great job.
Thank you.